Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. I am Judith TV, and here are the stories making headlines just beyond the continent. And we begin the news from Canada, where polls are open across the country for a snap election to determine who will become the country's next prime minister. It comes just 6 weeks after Mark Carney was sworn in as PM, replacing his party colleague, Justin Trudeau. The two frontrunners are the Liberal Party, led by Carney, who has been in power for a decade, and the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre. U.S. President Donald Trump has weighed in on the election via his social media account, repeating his calls for the nation to become the 51st U.S. state. An election expected to be a referendum on almost 10 years of liberal governance is now firmly centered at the polls. And joining us now from Dallas in Texas is Global Affairs Analyst Ejike Okpa. Mr. Okpa, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on. Canadians are caught in an election in which U.S. President Donald Trump, even if he's not on the ballot, will be main determinant of the outcome. It wasn't always this way. How have you followed the voting process in Canada, and what are your thoughts?
Thank you for having me. It's interesting that, of course, Mr. President Trump has a very big microphone and he doesn't hesitate. Microphone, he doesn't hesitate to use it. Obviously, people in Canada are paying attention whether that will translate or transform into Canada becoming the 51st state. We are yet to see that. But if they decide to do it, I think it's going to be to their own benefit, because Canada wouldn't be much of anything without American support. So it's interesting that such a thing is being considered for by them. But we're not holding our breath here, thinking that by tomorrow they're going to be signing up to want to become the 51st state of America.
Right. And the battle is between the Conservatives and the Liberals, and this has been long coming, especially with the resignation of Justin Trudeau earlier in the year. What exactly is at stake for Canada's national well-being beyond the common goal of saying they cannot be the 51st state of the United States?
Well, I think, under Trudeau, they had situations that a lot of them were not pleased with. It was more like leaning on the socialistic part of things. And the Canadians are beginning to recognize that for them to be productive and get more mileage out of their government, they want to have to align it to a conservative approach. You can't be everything to everybody. You gotta first of all have a sense of self-preservation, protect what you think is germane to your own national interests, and then welcome people who are going to come in there and uphold that thing. But if you do this come one, come all, and want to be loved by everybody, then you're going to end up losing what is important to you. The Canadians have seen that. Their trade is weak, their military is weak. The Canadian military is nothing, really. And when it comes to their natural resources, which is, telling the Canadian crude, they need America in order to move that crude. That's why we keep having issues with the Keystone Pipeline that would have enabled the Canadian crude to come through America and get shipped out of the Atlantic seaport. So it is one of those things that you have to come to terms and then see whether your leaders are actually doing something that is beneficial for the nation. And when they're not doing it, we go to the ballot box and vote them out, and hopefully you get a new set of people that will do what you want.
Voters are equally mindful of job losses that could be worsened by Donald Trump's tariffs impositions on Canadian firms. How far do you see this impacting the outcome of the vote?
Well, of course, those are things that the voters are going to consider. But, job losses oftentimes, economy can say they haven't lost any jobs. But the thing is, you make an adjustment. Maybe there are certain jobs that you don't really need. But then the ones you need, obviously, there's got to be a way they come back, because we still need the productivity. Machines are not going to replace all human beings, and I don't think that's what technology is supposed to do. But what we want to do is to actually look at how we use our resources and see if those resources can get us some mileage if we make some adjustment, including attrition as well as including machines. So the Canadians, are going to lose some job, based on the tariff. But at the same time, they're going to adjust to the new, to the new normal.
Right. And just lastly, what do you think about the sentiments of, this anti-immigrant sentiment that we're seeing being swept across most of the global South, or better yet, most of the Americas and even Europe as well? Doesn't it have a lasting impact on just, diplomacy and diplomatic ties in the long run?
Well, I think it's over exaggerated and it's stretched, to think, it's not anti-immigration, it's anti-illegal immigration. And nobody will want to have people they don't welcome or they don't want into their country. Nigeria did it back in the 80s when they woke up one day and told Ghanaians, get out. That which led to what they said, Ghana must go. So, in the history of every nation, they always come around and say, hey, do we really want these people? Are they adding to our well-being? So, but again, it gives opportunity for nations to start looking at what they are doing that is forcing, their own people to flee. By nature, since we found each other on earth, people have always moved across borders. But it shouldn't be this come one, come all. In economics, barrier to entry creates value. People are always going to go to that place they think, the pasture is going to be greener. But you can also make your own pasture greener. And it takes effort, it takes policies. So it's not just looking over your neighbor's fence to see what they're doing and want to jump in. You can say, hey, I can copy and paste. But if you copy, you have the will to paste. And that has been the challenge of the global South, because they have, somehow surrendered their own ability to turn their country around. Just wanting their people to migrate so that they can have this diaspora remittance, to enable them to live. Remittance does not make any country wealthy. You have to have your own people present in their own geography with conditions that enable them to be more productive. So Canada needs people, America needs people, Nigeria needs people, but you don't want to violate any nation's immigration, because by doing so, you don't have respect for them. And I'm an immigrant. I left Nigeria in the 80s. I came here and I came legally. My father wouldn't have allowed me to leave Nigeria if I didn't show him my visa. And he made it a condition. You're not going to go to anybody's home or house without being invited. And I stick to that. It's a lesson in responsibility and respect for people's own, home. America is our home. Nigeria is their home. Ghana is their home. Let those who respect you come in willingly and be part of what it is you are doing.
All right. Well, I must say thank you, Ejike, for taking out the time to join us. Ejike Okpa, Global Affairs Analyst, who joined us live from Dallas, Texas. Let's move on, shall we? Elsewhere in Southern America, snap elections are also held on Monday in the twin island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. This move comes after its new prime minister ordered the president to dissolve parliament last month in an unexpected move. Voters will choose 41 candidates for the House of Representatives. The party that clinched 21 seats wins a majority, and that party's leader typically is appointed prime minister. The diverse country of 1.4 million people has two main parties: the People's National Movement, led by current Prime Minister Stout Young, and the United National Congress, which is allied with a coalition of interests and is led by Kamla Persad-Bissessé, a former prime minister. Still in the Americas, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to unveil an executive order instructing federal agencies to identify and publish the names of local and state jurisdictions that hinder immigration enforcement efforts. The move forms part of a broader initiative aimed at curbing illegal migration and increasing pressure on so-called sanctuary cities. The order is expected to direct the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to compile a list of areas that fail to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. This development follows months of Republican efforts to restrict protections for undocumented immigrants in major U.S. cities. In the meantime, the U.S. president is pushing for a permanent ceasefire in Ukraine, voicing dissatisfaction with a recent short-term truce proposal for Moscow.
The second EO is centered around protecting American communities from criminal aliens, and it will direct the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to publish a list of state and local jurisdictions that obstruct the enforcement of federal immigration laws. He is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries. He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. I understand Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic as well. And both leaders need to come to the table to negotiate their way out of this. And I do think that the president meeting with President Zelensky shows that he is exuding a lot of effort and time into this because he wants to be a peacemaker president, which he wasn't.
Away from that, North Korea confirmed for the first time that it sent troops to fight for Russia in the war in Ukraine under orders from leader Kim Jong-un. North Korea's unprecedented deployment of thousands of troops as well as massive amounts of artillery, ammunition and missiles gave Russia a crucial battlefield advantage in the Western Caucasus region and has brought the two economically and politically isolated countries closer. Russia acknowledged the North Korean deployment for the first time over the weekend and said Ukrainian forces had been expelled from the last Russian village they were holding. Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Monday expressed his personal gratitude to North Korea and Kim. The U.S. State Department demanded an end to North Korea's deployment and any support to Russia. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a surprise three-day ceasefire from 8th to 10th of May, coinciding with Moscow's World War II Victory Day commemorations. Moscow said it expects Kyiv to issue a similar directive, adding that it stands ready to respond to any violations of the proposed pause in fighting. Putin issued a similar order for a ceasefire during Easter, a truce both sides accused each other of violating 100 times, although it did lead to a temporary reduction in hostilities. Last month, Putin rejected a U.S. proposal for a full and unconditional 30-day ceasefire, which Ukraine had accepted. And now to Europe, where cardinals will gather for the papal conclave, the centuries-old tradition through which a new head of the Catholic Church is elected, beginning on 7th of May. The announcement follows the burial of Pope Francis on Saturday, a ceremony that drew world leaders and hundreds of thousands of mourners to the Vatican City to pay their respects. Pope Francis passed away a week ago on Easter Monday at the age of 88 after a prolonged battle with ill health that saw him hospitalized for several weeks. The Vatican confirmed the conclave start date after a fifth meeting of the cardinals on Monday morning, attended by more than 180 cardinals. Meanwhile, a massive power outage swept across Spain and Portugal on Monday, disrupting mobile phone and internet networks, halting train services and trapping people in lifts. Spain's government was urgently working to determine the cause of the widespread blackout, with Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez visiting the headquarters of the state electricity network operator for a briefing. The operator, Red Electrica, announced that it would take between 6 to 10 hours to fully restore power across the country and urged the public not to engage in speculation about the cause of the outage. Images shared on social media showed metro stations plunged in darkness, trains brought to a standstill, and people in offices and corridors relying on the torches on their phones to find their way. Meanwhile, dozens of people wait outside Barcelona's main train station, Barcelona Centre, after a power outage hit Spain and Portugal, causing widespread disruption. Now, the power outage halted train traffic, clogging roads and trapping people in elevators before electricity started to return in some areas after hours of disruption. Spain's government is scrambling to find the cause of the outage, which hit at 12:30 p.m. That's about 10:30 GMT, leaving many people in the dark. And let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, we head on to France. But after the break, stay with us. Welcome back. And now it's off to France, where protests have erupted across major cities following the brutal killing of a young Muslim man inside a mosque in the southern village of La Grande Combe. Now, the demonstrators in Paris and other cities have condemned rising anti-Muslim sentiment and called for stronger protections for religious minorities. Authorities are now hunting for the suspect, a 20-year-old French citizen of Bosnian descent, accused of stabbing the victim multiple times during prayer. The attacker reportedly filmed the assault while shouting slurs before fleeing the scene. The victim, a Malian national in his early 20s, was discovered by fellow worshippers arriving for Friday prayers. In response, the government has increased security at religious sites across the country. While investigators are treating Islamophobia as the primary motive, they are also pursuing additional lines of inquiry.
Mais voyez-vous, il est temps de dire à tous ceux qui, de bonne foi, hésitent parfois sur les mots, que ce qui s'est passé est qualifié par nous d'islamophobe parce que c'est au-delà de la haine de l'islam. C'est au-delà d'une critique de la religion. C'est un acte qui, par définition, déshumanise celui contre lequel il est mené.
Voilà, tout ce que nous on peut dire, on a confiance à l'autorité. On a confiance. On veut que l'autorité fasse son travail, tout ce qui est nécessaire pour nous rendre la justice. Voilà, on leur dit merci.
Je suis venue parce qu'on est dans un moment qui est extrêmement grave, extrêmement douloureux. Moi j'ai peur, je suis inquiète. Il y a un homme qui est mort dans un lieu de paix, en prière, assassiné avec une cinquantaine de coups de couteau. Je crois qu'au-delà de nos croyances, de nos confessions, de nos religions, là il faut faire appel à notre humanité. J'ai le sentiment qu'on ne prend pas la mesure de ce crime, la mesure de l'horreur qui se passe et la mesure de la violence et de la haine qui se distille tous les jours dans notre...
Head of the United Nations Refugee Agency on Monday warned that funding cuts could force a one-third reduction in its activities, despite conflicts continuing to strain its resources. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, told the Security Council that they will not be able to do more with less. He stated that the UNHCR's presence is important for protection reasons, for discussing with governments, for contributing to legislative debates, and of course for humanitarian operations, which leaves him very worried. And now to the Middle East, where Houthi rebels have claimed responsibilities for an attack on a U.S. aircraft carrier. Now, this, they say, is in response to the U.S. strikes that hit a migrant detention center in the Houthi stronghold of Sadda, killing at least 68 people. The rebels also claimed their latest military operation against Israel, the third in as many days, saying they sent a drone towards, quote, the occupied region of Ashkelon on Israel's southern coast.
باستهداف حاملة الطائرات الأمريكية ترومان والقطع الحربية التابعة لها والاشتباك معها في عملية مشتركة نفذتها القوات البحرية وسلاح الجو المسير والقوة الصاروخية، وذلك بعدد من الصواريخ المجنحة والبالستية والطائرات المسيرة.
And off to Syria, many rallied in Damascus to demand the release of military faction leader Issam Boadani, who was arrested by authorities in the United Arab Emirates. Since 2015, the opposition leader has been head of Jashi al-Islam, a group that fought against the now-ousted ruler Bashar al-Assad and once controlled the eastern Ghouta area near Damascus. After Syria's new authorities announced the dissolution of armed groups following Assad's December overthrow, Jashi al-Islam was integrated into the new Syrian forces, and the opposition leader became a defense ministry official.
التجمع هو المطالبة بخروج الثائر عصام بويضاني من سجون الإمارات العربية المتحدة الذي احتجز على خلفية فيش نظام وتهم يعني ليس له بها علاقة.
أنا موجود اليوم لأرسل رسالة إلى الإمارات وإلى حكومة سوريا الجديدة وإلى وزير الخارجية تحديدا أننا نطالب بخروج البطل القائد الهمام الشيخ عصام بيضاني أبو همام.
And still in the Middle East, the death toll from a huge explosion that rocked one of Iran's main ports on Monday rose to 46. This is according to Iranian state television. The fire from the blast at Shahid Raja port near Bandar Abbas still burned at the site some 2 days after the initial explosion on Saturday. Over 1,000 people suffered injuries in the blast. Authorities still haven't offered an explanation for the explosion. This is happening just as Iran began a third round of negotiations with the United States over its rapidly advancing nuclear program. And off to Asia, as China has called on India and Pakistan to exercise restraint following a deadly flare-up in the disputed Kashmir region. Soldiers from both countries have exchanged gunfire for the fourth consecutive night, raising concerns about a potential larger conflict. The clashes follow a brutal attack in Kashmir that claimed the lives of 26 civilians. India has accused Pakistan of supporting, quote, cross-border terrorism, end quote, a claim Pakistan has vehemently rejected, describing it as frivolous and warning of a strong response to any Indian military action. Now, as tensions continue to escalate, China has urged both nations to engage in dialogue to peacefully resolve their differences and uphold regional stability. The international community is closely monitoring the situation.
欢迎一切有利于当前局势降温的举措，支持尽快开展公正调查。 作为印度和巴基斯坦的共同邻国，中方希望印巴双方保持克制，相向而行，通过对话协商。
And that's all we can take from beyond the continent. Now, do remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen, and you can follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV on all social media platforms. If you're on the continent, you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422. On GoTV now, find us on channel 23. We're also on Star Times, channel 274. Find us on Avo TV. And if you're outside of the continent, make sure to stream us live on YouTube. And thanks for watching. I am Judith at TV. Good night.